Hi guys, welcome back to Irish Footy Vlogs. Delighted to welcome Philip back to the show as the season closes in. Philip, how are you? Happy New Year.
Yeah, and to you, Keith, and to you. Hope everyone had a lovely Christmas, and hopefully this year is much better. I can already tell it's going to be much better than last year. I think there's light at the end of the tunnel now, Keith, for all fans, and not just ourselves. So it's great. And I only said to myself the other day, I thought it was 6 weeks until the start of the season. Obviously, I'm saying 3 weeks. Where's time going? Like, do you know what I mean? So, obviously the curtain raiser next week as well, I believe, and it's just good, exciting times. Everyone's always in good form at this time of the year.
Brilliant stuff. I suppose this video is about where's the League of Ireland headed, and obviously we've seen all these young players go abroad recently. To James Banquet, the most recent one that I haven't really spoken about as such in relation to this kind of topic. Gone for around 500-600 grand. We're not really sure what it is, but I think Percy Patson played a blinder there. We've seen Bazunu do something similar as a youngster, moving to Man City from Shamrock Rovers, and how that's really helped Shamrock Rovers, not just the fee, but the actual clauses, etc. I know a lot of that money has gone towards training facilities and indoor training facilities, etc., etc. And I suppose, Pat's getting the 500-600 grand for a banquet. I'm sure there's clauses in there as well, and fees regarding international caps, etc., sell-on clauses and all that. But this is obviously good news, Philip, for the League of Ireland generally, and it's something we want to see happen more often. That young talent, because more and more young talent is leaving, but we want them to be tied down if possible, and we want all clubs, to be honest with you, to get big fees for these players, big as they possibly can get, and maybe put that money back into the facility and the running of their clubs. I suppose in the next couple of years, can League of Ireland clubs keep this going? And what can they do to ensure it actually happens going forward, and that we can reinvest back into the league and into the clubs?
Yeah, it's a brilliant point. There is. And I suppose the main thing that I think you've kind of asked me there is, can they keep it going? I personally believe, yeah. Obviously, there's a lot of other technicalities around it that need to be looked at. I'm not going to talk about the FAI at all in this video. I want to kind of mention it as in a club's perspective. What can a club do without funding from obviously you've got your sponsorships and all that sort of stuff, but the FAI are a different kettle of fish, so I'm kind of not going to talk about them. But look, it's been brilliant to see. I think everyone would agree it's great to see such fees for players. I'd imagine as Stephen Bradley said there a few weeks ago, if these players were Scandinavian or from other different parts of Europe, they'd go for a lot more, which is probably true in a sense. But I suppose where we are now, I think is a very, very good starting point, and it's not just a once-off. It's been the last couple of years. We've seen more deals like this come through. And I suppose another thing is Scotland. We've seen a couple of lads that are really, really experienced heading to Scotland, but for very little fees involved, but you know what I mean? I think people are starting to recognise how good the standard of the youth side of the thing, and the youth side of the league is, with youngsters coming through, and that goes back to your academies, in my personal opinion. Keith, I think one of the biggest stars in Irish football, Gavin Bazunu, came from Shamrock Rovers Academy, and he went right through it, and I think it's kind of, we've seen it actually happen where we've got a player that lives in Tallaght, goes to a normal school, plays his football, gets brought into this academy, gets brought right through, gets it done the right way, and all of a sudden, playing for the first team within a couple of months, he's gone on to bigger and better things. And look, it's not going to be like that for everyone. Jeez, if it was, it'd be great, because football would be too easy then, and everyone would be rolling in money. But it's a system that's been put in place a few years back that we can say, right, this is working, and Pats have done it as well. And you could see, I think it would have been hard to predict how well it's been up to now in terms of the profile, in terms of the caliber of the fee. Because a few 5-6 years ago, you'd have never thought that this was going to happen. I don't think, anyways. With the way clubs are being run. So I think it's definitely something that is going to continue, and the reason being is that you've got all these academies being set up now, and the fees that are starting to come back in. are going to hopefully be reinvested correctly, and that's something that clubs need to take ownership as well and say, well, look, we've got all this money, we're going to pump it back in. And look, you can go back and say that other clubs like Bows have looked at it from years ago where, do you know what I mean, Doherty as well, they've kind of, that kind of gets a bit, I don't think that gets enough attention as it deserves, because at the end of the day, he went off a few years back, and it only came back then 5 or 6 years, 7 years later, when he moved on from Wolves. So
I think the difference there, Philip, is that they done well. Obviously, they did well to get the fee, but initially that was one player. If you get me, initially clubs generally haven't been getting
the money,
the best deal up front, let's say.
Yeah.
Because Doherty was a little bit lucky, as such, or Bowes got lucky with Doherty. I mean, that could have been 50 other players. And it's the upfront money that the problem has been at. I mean, most clubs in Europe have their youngsters at 16 and pro deals. In Ireland, it's not necessarily the case. So what's happening is, say, a player that's 18, obviously he can go to England when he's 18, he has to be 18 now, but now they can go to Italy, anywhere in Europe, basically, essentially, if they're 16. But we have to try somehow, and it's not easy. Clubs have to try and tie down players that are 15, not 15, because they're not really at that age, but 16, to pro contracts. Try, if they can, to get 3, 4, 5 year deals. I know it's not easy, but obviously Pats have kind of done that with Abankwah, and Sean McCovers did that with Bazunu. But they have to try, I think, and do that, because what's happening is the likes of Johnny Kenny, you know what I mean? He's leaving at 18, and there's a minimum fee clause in his contract, and it's 150 grand. Now, a lot of people would argue, why is Abankwah higher than Kenny in terms of quality? And maybe he isn't. It's just the way the contracts have run. And that's something we have to sort out. And it's not easy, because 95% of players, young players, still see the League of Ireland as a stepping stone to England, which is fair enough to a degree. But they still mightn't quite take the League of Ireland as seriously as they should. And then what happens is, 16, 17, 18, suddenly agents come into the equation. So agents are saying, why are you signing a 3-year contract or 4-year contract with that club? Don't tie yourself down. Leave yourself open. So you can move to Italy, Spain, or when you're 18, move to England, and you'll go for a cheaper fee. You'll be more likely to go there because the clubs will be more likely to pay a compensation fee than a 500, 600 grand to Bazunu and Abankwah, That's the difficulty. And it's not easy for clubs to, we want them to do that, but there's other factors there, isn't there, at play to stop that from happening. But I feel that's where we need to get to, though, I think, to safeguard the clubs, if we can.
Yeah, exactly. I think I kind of mentioned it there earlier, though, Keith, there's a lot of technicalities. And I think the biggest one is that the big clubs that we've seen in the past couple of months, a couple of years, that have got these fees, do you know what I mean? You've got your likes of your Finn Harps, your Waterfords, that aren't essentially in the same category. Waterford have a good setup down there in terms of their youth side and how they bring players through, which is good to see. But again, you're going back to these contracts, these 38-week contracts that are involved for most of the full-time players that are playing full-time. Obviously the younger lads, there's a different kettle of fish altogether, but it's I think there needs to be a fine line where we don't see these Dublin clubs getting richer and other clubs that probably are trying to do it the right way getting poorer as well, because the other clubs are having more infrastructure or money being pumped in from lads going abroad. So you've got that, and then you've got obviously the FAI, as I said. I won't chat about them, it's a different day.
Education is obviously a thing as well, Philip, as such. I mean, I know some clubs are trying to, marry education with the contracts and that, but I think it probably has to be done in a more serious way now as well, that they really look after the player. And, you have an academy, just take Pat's an example, because the bank was actually come through. And, they have a lot of good young players coming through there. So you'd look at the likes of them and say, look, if they can do what they did with a bank with other players, you know what I mean? The sky's the limit. And it's the same for other clubs. I mean, all these clubs, any club, Derry City, Sligo, when there's a young player coming through with quality, they know there's a young player coming through with quality. The coaches know. They know damn well. So, it's not a case of, what if he isn't that good in the long run and we give him a 3 or 4 year deal? It could still be done, because, you know the quality of the player. You can see the quality of the player. And at the end of the day, if he doesn't turn out as good as you think he might turn out, I still don't think, because you're signing a young player on a pro contract, you're not giving them loads of money necessarily either. And you can build a pathway for that player as well, in my opinion. So, there's a lot of things there as well, I think.
Yeah, of course. And there's also the side of the player as well, which is something that we could talk about all day. But there is that fine line, Keith. And I think we started, do you know what I mean? Obviously, the big one is the last few weeks of Banquet, of what's happened, in terms of how it's gone about. And I have to say, I think Pats have kind of put down a stepping stone now for all clubs going forward.
You'd like to think, Philip. You'd like to think. And I think that's why we're exhausting this video as well, because we'd like to think this would happen with most clubs now, if possible.
Yeah, and I think with Rovers, like with the Zunu and such, there wasn't as much. I don't think Rovers put their foot down as much as they probably could have. Obviously, in hindsight, you could turn around and say brilliant, but going back to, you kind of got a bit fortunate with the likes of those appearances that Bazunu made for Ireland. That obviously generated a lot more money into that deal for Bazunu. Whereas the fee up front was quite decent at the time, but I thought personally, if you look at a banquet and you look at Bazunu, I think what Bazunu had done to his career at that point was much further than what a banquet had done, in my personal opinion now, because at the end of the day, I think he kept 8 clean sheets or something from 9 games. I don't think he conceded in the league, that is, when he was there. And
you hit the nail on the head there a little bit, Philip, to be honest with you, because you're trying to say basically that Rovers made most of their money because he went to City and played for Ireland, things like that. And the same with Doherty in the past for Bowes. But not every player that we sell of even of good quality might go on and play for Ireland or move to a big club. So you can be fleeced unless that happens, basically.
Of course, yeah. And I think the thing is with these contracts that we're talking about, the young pro contracts, if it doesn't work, you're not essentially going into it negotiations with a young teenager with the intention of, we're going to sell them and make a fortune. You want them to play for your club at the end of the day. Do you know what I mean? But you need to have that security there, that if you have someone that's an absolute wonder kid and they're going to go on to big things, you need to know that you're going to get that fee. And especially where our clubs are in terms of a financial situation, and what we've all seen the financial hardship of the League of Ireland over the past, since forever, really. When you think about it, there's always clubs in trouble, and it's just, it's so, margins are so tight that we can't allow this opportunity that is, I personally think, coming in the next couple of years to evade us, because if we do, it'll stay the same forever. And I think academies won't prosper as much as they probably should, because I think now after what's happened in the past couple of seasons, I think there's going to be a lot more coming through, and I think it'll kind of put a bit more faith. I think it'll kind of be more of a firmer path, do you know what I mean, for lads coming through saying, look, I don't have to go to England at the age of 12, 13, 14. I can go when I'm 16, 17 or 18. And that's something that would be very exciting for me personally. If I was a young lad going into a club like that, but again, it's the importance of the club being looked after as well for what they've done is something that it just cannot be emphasised enough, especially where we are now with this big deal in the last few weeks.
I do think more clubs, though, are starting to look at a longer term view. Do you? Have you noticed that in the last couple of years? And you can really see that coming through now. I mean, the fact that they're playing an awful lot of young players. I mean, today, as an example, Rovers played a friendly, they won 3-0. 3 of the guys that scored a goal were on the under-19 side last year. So, all these clubs are adopting a longer term view. You're not seeing what you would say crazy money being flung around in general. Even with Shamrock Rovers and Derry, they're spending more than, say, other clubs at the moment, but it's within the structures of the clubs. Do you know what I mean? It's not like they're just throwing money here, left, right, centre. They know what they're doing within the structures of their clubs. So I think, and the smaller clubs are doing the same at a different level, but they're all doing the same thing. There is a longer term view, and that can only be good in a couple of years as well, surely. Yeah,
100%. I think that's something that probably is slightly off topic before I hit your question, but something even up north, you see there's a lot of money flying about at the minute, and I don't think there's a long-term approach involved in that, in my opinion. I think that's that last. I think it's maybe a rainbow.
It's ridiculous money, and in general, the quality isn't as good either.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, And if you look at the infrastructure of all those clubs up there as well, it wouldn't be half as much as to, well, I suppose in terms of where they are, it wouldn't be half as good probably as the academies that are down here, down south, you know. And I think, sorry, to answer your question though, Keith, I do think there is that long-term approach being adopted, you know. Like, I think, like I sometimes do it, but I try not to. Speaking about Rovers, you go up to Roadstone and you see the academy and how everything's set up. You're just saying to yourself, "Wow, like this is first class." Like, and look, there's other clubs in Dublin that maybe aren't there, but are starting to realise the importance of it, you know, and it's good to see as well.
Well, I think that's the biggest point there, Philip, actually, just jumping quickly there, because you're right, Rovers do have a good facility. But that is one of the things that our clubs in general don't have, and it is good facilities, to be fair. The training facilities are decent with some clubs, not so good with other clubs. The stadiums, as we know, in general, are not up to standard to what we see on the pitch. For example, do you know the National League in England is obviously the conference? Overall, the quality here is stronger than that, but their facilities are way better. You know, that's something that we have to look at in the next few years. And be it new stadiums, there's a lot of clubs looking to build new stadiums, etc., etc., etc. The quicker that's done, the better it is, because younger players will go into the league and say, do you know what? The facilities aren't half bad here. You know, that stadium's, you know, it's a good stadium. The facilities, I enjoy playing here. Maybe I don't have to go to England when I'm 18, or, you know, abroad to Italy or France when I'm 16, 17, 18 as well. Maybe I'll stay for a few years here. You know, the league is getting better because of that reason as well. So, you know, that's really a massive thing. And it's a massive critical point for people that don't watch the league. So, you know, what can we do better, though, do you think, in terms of facilities in the next 5 years? Or can we do better in the next 5 years? Is that more long-term for you?
I'd like to think it wouldn't be a long-term thing, but maybe it is, you know. If you take Rovers out of the equation, you know, like facilities-wise, you're not talking like Dundalk, bar their stadium. I think they've got a good set up essentially, but I think it's no more than good, like, you know, in terms of how they had that club. Obviously,
and there's so many clubs wanting to move stadium, get a new stadium. Finn Harps, the Pats, Drogheda, the Bowes, Shelburne scenario is another thing as well. How long is that going to take? You know, did I mention Finn Harps? Finn Harps as well. I didn't mention Finn Harps, and you know, it's just that's the thing, and it's just time with those things. It's a big thing, but I feel, as you say, like everything what we said is kind of true, and those little details need to happen. But until we get correct facilities, you feel like it's not really going to really come up to set the standard, let's say.
I think the main example of this, Keith, is Dalymount Park. Like, at the end of the day, like, do you know what I mean? Like, it is the prime example of the potential opportunity to have a fantastic facility with it. Look, again, Bowes do have a big following. Do you know what I mean? They shouldn't have a stand with 3,000 being able to be max capacity. Like, do you know what I mean? I don't even think it's 3,000.
Look, it's horrible when you see the likes of Talca Park and Dalymount Park, and there's an actual stand on the far side and this side of Talca or whatever you're going. You can't even use them. Like, it's mental.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that is a big issue as well. And I like to think that, like, these fees that we're starting to see now will, because at the end of the day, people can turn around and say it's the FAI's fault. They do have a big part to play in it, but I suppose in terms of upkeep and stuff like that, clubs did have to take ownership as well, like, you know. And I think these fees, like, look, you're not going to turn around and build up a new stand in Dalymount because you get 500,000 for a player. Like, you know what I mean? That's not going to happen. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying that, like, clubs need to go in and say, look, where can we improve? Do you know what I mean? And at the end of the day, I think Bowes is the perfect example. They need a new stadium. Do you know what I mean? And they're not going to be able to build it with money from players. That's just, we're a long way away from that. And I don't think you'll ever get anything like that. But
no,
you know, I think you need to kind of have a starting point. And, you know, like, you see Tierney and all heading off to Scotland there, and kind of you're kicking yourself saying, do you know what I mean? Like, missing out again, Bowes missing out again, and Georgie as well. Like, you know, it's
free contract, he's out of contract, so free transfer to Rotherham. Like, you know, so that it comes back to that kind of stuff as well. It just has to, somehow stop. And it is a fear of clubs offering, say, that's a good example because he's not what you call a young player. But say go and offering George Kelly a 3-year contract. You say, oh, he was useless a past year before. Why would we give him a 3-year contract? He comes and scores 20-odd goals, suddenly he's off to Rotherham for nothing. So you can see that side of it with clubs as well. But I feel that it's worth taking the risk on very young players that are coming through your academy that you know have qualities. There's 2 lads at Derry that are 15 at the moment, and I know they've got quality. So if I know they've got quality, what do the Derry coaching staff think? Try and tie them down. And there's a number of things there. Yeah. The player has to agree to it for a start. He has to agree to a 3 or 4 year contract. If he doesn't, it's not much you can do. And as soon as one of these young players plays 10 minutes for the seniors, agents everywhere coming in from all over the place, Sharks, don't sign with that club, because if you sign a long-term contract with that club, clubs in England or clubs, whatever, in Spain, whatever it is, may not come in for you because you'll be worth more money as such. So it'll be easier for you to get to these countries quicker if you're not tied down to contract. That's the difficulty. But that's where we have to change the mindset of the young players within these clubs. We have to try and change the mindset and get them to realise that this is actually a very good league and a good standard. That if you're playing here for a couple of years and if you're 20 and still here, it's no harm. That's another thing. Of course, if someone comes in with a bid of 400 or 500 grand at 18, like they did with a bank with a patch, to say thanks very much or whatever.
Of course, like anyone. And it is something that I think is going to change. I think you mentioned it there a minute ago with that long-term approach. I think, like when you see young lads coming through, and do you know what I mean? We're only starting to see it, as we said there a few moments ago. But we're starting to see young lads coming through and getting their chance and sticking around in the club for a couple of years or so, even though it's on a part-time contract or whatever you may have. I think that there is a tone at the moment where people aren't looking at the league and saying, oh, it's rubbish football and all this sort of stuff. And I think one person I have to give a bit of credit to, and like I think Keith Long has been brilliant with Bowes, for perfect example. Like, how many young lads have we seen coming through Bowes? You know what I mean? Like, and look, you know what I mean? They're slipping off or nothing, and that's not.
He does at the same time. He does, Philip, but at the same time, in all honesty, like, it would take a blind man to not see some of the quality coming through there as well. So if you've the likes of I know he came back from England, but Mandrew, for example, you've got Tierney, as you said, Devoy, bloody Lyons, and now Mullins coming through. I mean, you know what I mean? But that's what I mean. That's my point. Those clubs are kind of set up, but they have to make sure that they safeguard and they give longer contracts somehow and get a proper fee for these players, because otherwise it's almost pointless. You're wasting the opportunity. You might as well let the money go down the drain,
Yeah, I think another big thing that will affect this going forward, Keith, is the Conference League. In my opinion, the money that is going to be generated from the Conference League in the next couple of years. Because I'll be honest with you, like, I'd fancy not next year, but I'd say maybe in 3-4 years' time, we could look at 2 teams in the conference in the group stages, in my opinion. Because if you look at the quality of it, like, I thought last year, had Rovers got into it, they would have had a great chance getting out of their group. Just looking at
I think they should have got into it, to be honest.
They should have.
Disappointed not to,
and like, I'm pretty sure it's at least a couple of million that you're seeing from that. Like, do you know what I mean? And like, do you know what I mean? You get 2 clubs getting that, all of a sudden you're saying, right, they have this money, where is it going? And there's more pressure then on them to put it back into the club. Do you know what I mean? And so that is something I think is going to change going forward. I think it's going to be there's going to be more money coming into the league from that in that sort of sense. But I think, Keith, it's definitely something that we're hoping to see more of, because
and you know yourself, Philip. The better the product, the better advertising and sponsorship you get as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 100%. And like, do you know what I mean? More exposure as well comes with that, and you've got more scouts then in the league as well. And all of a sudden you're saying to players, sign this deal with us, sign this 3 or 4 year deal with us. We're going to be playing in Europe next year, and all of a sudden you've got these scouts from all over Europe, not even actually happen to want to go and watch a League of Ireland team, but actually just turning on the television, and all of a sudden you've got someone watching someone from Dublin playing against a team in Italy. Do you know what I mean? Like,
and also you want to get rid of that reputation that they can come over and take players on the cheap as well. You want to get rid of that reputation if possible as well, because that's a killer as well. But I think we leave it there, Philip. I think that was a good conversation, good discussion. Be very interested to see what the people think in the comments. Let us know what you think in the comments. Subscribe even to the channel if you haven't subscribed already. Hit your bell notification button and like the video if you enjoyed this content. Thanks for watching.